Morning, guys. So today I thought, hi Jane, hi Jane. I want to do an introduction to the course. We didn't do that last time. So the subject matter of the course, guys, is moral reasoning, and moral reasoning is this field, guys, that is concerned primarily with the identification of what the right action is, what the good action would be, what the virtuous action should be like. So moral reasoning is concerned with is concerned with how to define or how to understand the meaning of goodness, or the meaning of virtue, or the meaning of what the right action is. Let me, yes, Jane, there is a WhatsApp group. It's sent on the chat box if you want to. Thank you. Mabel sent it again. So let me give you an example to illustrate. This is a real story. Florida, 1992. Baby Teresa was born, and baby Teresa was born with a kind of condition, congenital disorder, right? Baby Teresa technically didn't have a brain, right? So she was a living infant, but with no brain. And her parents, out of their goodwill and kindness, made a decision to donate baby Teresa's part to children in need. So because all Teresa's parts are functional: heart, kidney, they're in good shape, right? Except that baby Teresa didn't have a brain, right? So her parents willingly agreed to donate baby Teresa's parts to children who are in need of heart, kidney. The doctors approve, but the problem is that the law in Florida forbid that, because the law in Florida, at least at that time, I'm not sure about now, forbid organ donation to be performed if the person in question is alive, right? And since baby Teresa is alive, then it was considered unlawful and illegal for baby Teresa's organs to be donated. Now, this is a moral issue, guys, an ethical issue, because it raises questions about what's right and wrong. Is it right to donate the parts of a living organism, right? I mean, this is the main issue. Is it right to donate the parts, the organs of a living organism, like Teresa's, right? And I guess people might have mixed opinions and feelings about the situation, right? Mixed views. Some people would consider that life is sacred, that it would be wrong to sacrifice Teresa's life so that Teresa would be used as a spare parts for other children in need, because life is sacred, right? Some would also think it would be wrong to use baby Teresa as again, a spare part organism for other children. On the other hand, many others would think differently. Others would think that in the end of the day, beneficially speaking, children in need would benefit from Teresa's organs, right? And anyway, uh, baby Teresa herself is kind of lives in a condition where she is not capable of conscious, meaningful living. So it would be best to use baby Teresa's part or organs to help out children who would benefit from receiving baby Teresa's organs. I don't know, guys. What do you think? Agree? This? What do you think about this situation? Renat seems to think that it would be beneficial to do so, right? But I'm sure some of you would have the opposite view as well, right? Yeah, except Jean-Marc. The problem is baby Teresa's is not in the position to make decisions. That's the catch, right? But yeah, even so, that's true. But then Jean-Marc, you would be taking the line that baby Teresa has a life that we ought to respect, regardless of what condition she's in. Right? I guess that's your take. Yeah, absolutely. So you see already Jean-Marc and Renard have like opposite views about the matter, right? So this, guys, would be an example of the kind, okay, Jana wrote, baby is not, yes, that, absolutely, Jana. But still, I guess Jean-Marc's point that the life of Teresa is sacred, is valuable. So much so that it would be wrong to use her as a spare part, regardless of what condition she's in. Yeah. Hi, Anal Norris. So, moral reasoning, guys. Let me just move on to say a few things about what moral reasoning is about. In moral reasoning, in reasoning about these issues and other issues, okay, I forgot the page number, hang on. In reasoning about moral issues, one should put aside one's emotions and one's feelings and one's sentiments and one's, I guess, narrow, perhaps, perspectives. And instead of that, one should try to think about the issues using reason and arguments. So James Rachels, for example, puts, if we want to discover the truth, we must try to let our feelings be guided as much as possible by arguments that can be given for the opposite views. Morality is a matter of consulting reasoning. So the idea here is that we should not remain entrenched in our narrow, perhaps emotional points of view, but we should try to look at the case using reason, look at the case using arguments, and addressing the issue, like baby Teresa's issue and other issues, from multiple points of views, from multiple perspectives. And that's why, guys, it's important to distinguish between morality and taste. Morality is not matter of taste or preference. It's not like you like coffee or you like tea or you like football or basketball. Morality is a matter, moral reasoning is a matter that is fundamentally concerned with rationality, with reason, with arguments, which means it's important not to be narrow minded in our points of view, but to take into account multiple perspectives using arguments and rationality. And so that takes us to the point morality requires an element of impartiality and neutrality, which means that in deciding moral issues, uh, uh, every and each individual's interest should be given equal importance, right? From within a moral perspective, no individual, right? No person should be regarded as having a superior position to another individual. Rather, all individual points of view should be given equal importance. Rachel's put it, each of us must, I'm reading guys this part, each of us must acknowledge that other people's welfare is as important as our own. In other words, we shouldn't, guys, only focus on the interests of one person over another, or the interests of our interests over the interests of others. Rather, we should take the interests of all, right? We should consider the welfare and the welfare and benefit of all individuals when deciding the matter. So we should consider not only, guys, the interest of Teresa only, and the interests of the doctors and the family, but we should also perhaps take into account the interests of all individuals in society, right? It doesn't mean necessarily that that it's right for baby Teresa to be sacrificed, but I'm saying that in deciding matters, moral matters, we should take into account the perspectives of all individuals. And once we do that, then once we take the welfare or the well-being of all individuals into consideration, then we should start looking for good arguments, good reasons to back our decisions, our judgments. It's important not to base our decisions on bad reasons or bad arguments, right? And hopefully in the space of the course, I will perhaps share you maybe a way of how to be able, to tell, I guess, good arguments from bad arguments, right? Good reasoning from bad reasoning, right? This takes us to what Rachel's would call the minimum conception of morality. I want to read this part of you again. In the minimum conception, morality is, at the very least, the effort to guide one's conduct by reason. That is to do what there are the best reasons for doing, while giving equal weight to the interests of each individual who will be affected by what one does. Right? So what does it mean to be moral, guys? What does it mean to reason morally? It means to reason. It means moral reasoning means to be concerned with providing the best rationale, the best reasons for doing or performing an action, right? While taking into account the interests of all individuals who might be or who would be affected in our decisions. Teresa, family, other children. Let me give you another example, maybe Corona, COVID-19 related example, right? Like, for example, whether it has to do with wearing masks in public or social distancing or what have you. I mean, the rationale of applying policies of social distancing uh, and wearing masks would be considered moral because we would be providing really good arguments for doing so, taking into interests, right? All individuals, right? And of course, also vaccines, right? Vaccination would be absolutely, absolutely. And arguments, guys, in morality could be backed up by scientific evidence, but also by other kinds of evidence, not to mention logical consistency and logical validity. Yes, but I mean, Renat, I see. But I guess, Renat, what I mean to say is that vaccination seems like to be an ethical, a right thing to do, because there are good reasons to do it, right, Renat? Why? Because you will be taking the interests of all. So even if maybe some would not like to take the vaccines, right? Um, right? Even if maybe some would not, right? That doesn't mean that the vaccination policy is, that doesn't mean that the vaccination policy is not a right thing to do, right? So, in fact, one could say that it's wrong not to, it's wrong, it's unethical for a state not to, right? Not to carry out such a vaccination policy in the first place. Absolutely, Hussein wrote it there. Yes, yes. So I was saying that in morality, we have to take the interests of all, right? Especially with, like, since we're talking about Corona, because you might think that Corona would only affect um, um, that Corona, the COVID-19 would possibly affect some members in society, right? Um, even so, even if Corona might affect some members, the elderly, the unhealthy, it's still, it is wrong. It would be wrong to ignore the interests of the elderly and the unhealthy just because the healthy individuals would not be affected by COVID-19. Why? Because in moral decisions, we have to take the interest of all, right? The healthy as well as the unhealthy, the young as well as the elderly. Yes, yeah, Jana, absolutely. Of course, there are many fears surrounding vaccinations, but I think scientifically, exactly. So you answered there. I think scientifically speaking, vaccines work, right? I mean, of course, there are risks, but the risks are minimal in comparison to the risks that would be posed by COVID-19, right? So rationally speaking, in the end, um, vaccination policy is the right thing. I don't know if you guys agree, is the right thing to do, right? Uh, and in fact, not to do it is wrong. I think all countries, no, I think all countries are kind of Yes, of course there are risks. All countries, I think, are kind of following this vaccination policy. So this is really what moral reasoning is about. Let me share with you also the uh, something else. Can you see the PowerPoint, or do I need to share to switch the to change the sharing option? Can you see it, guys? No, I don't think. Yeah, I need to. It used to work. I don't know. This update in WebEx is a bit. Used to work. Yeah. Okay, so in okay, sorry, you wrote something there. And how actually everything has. Yes, and the advantages outweighing the advantages, Anhal, is a kind of rational argument that could be used to supporting um the right the supporting the view that it's morally right to implement vaccination policy. Um, okay, so as I said, moral reasoning is primarily concerned with two questions: the what question and the why question. We are first of all concerned with addressing the question about what is right and what is good and what is virtuous, right? We moral reasoning expected to classify the various kinds of goods and evils. We expect, guys, moral reasoning to involve or provide some kind of definition of what is right or what is good. So, let me give you an example. So, one traditional popular definition of goodness, or what a good action is. One traditional definition is that a good action is that action which uh, provides pleasures for individuals, right? We call this the hedonistic definition of morality, right? And so if you define goodness in that way, then you classify goods and evils accordingly. But of course, not all would agree on this definition, right? Another question that moral reasoning tackles is the why question. Is yeah, Nietzsche actually not really. Nietzsche was not hedonistic, right? Nietzsche, if any, I think was anti-hedonism. He was like, he made fun of hedonism in some sense. Nietzsche's approach was different, right? I think. So the second question is the why question, as to why good is defined in a certain way rather than another. So we not only expect. Yes, Anhal, definitely. So not only we expect moral reasoning to give definitions of what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what is bad, but also we expect moral reasoning, more significantly, we expect moral theories to provide an explanation of why um, um, why goodness is defined in one way or another. So we expect moral theories, we expect moral reasoning to provide a rationale, an explanation in the form of principles or rules or ideas that would explain why goodness is defined in one way rather than another. So if a philosopher defines goodness in terms of pleasure, we expect a rationale, an explanation of why goodness is defined in that way or another, right? Yeah, guys. So in the course, we will be exploring a number of approaches to moral reasoning that precisely address these questions, the what question and the why question. Somebody wrote something saying, yeah, of course. Here it's all dependent on the approach. You know, this is a humanities. Moral reasoning is a course in the humanities, and in the humanities, guys, all fields of humanities, there is no absolute right or wrong question. Ultimately, there's no absolute right or wrong answer. I meant to say, ultimately, our answers, yes, absolutely, because it's unpredictable, but ultimately because our answers depend on our theoretical approach, on our perspectives, right? Yeah. So I was saying that in the readings that we will cover, we will be addressing all these questions, the what question and the why question. So when we read virtue theory, utilitarianism, rights theory, we don't only cover the what question, but we also cover the why question, right? And Hal wrote, yeah, maybe you kind of jumping ahead, guys. Let me share with you a number, Heike, of concepts that maybe you are kind of thinking about your guys in your writing. Okay, so the first concept is cultural relativism. Do you know what that means? Cultural relativists deny the existence of absolute values, absolute conceptions of right and wrong. So go back here. So the cultural relativist would argue that there are no absolutes when it comes to definitions of right and wrong, good and bad, good and evil. Why? Because the cultural relativist would say that, or would argue that morality is relative to cultures, that conceptions of right and wrong are relative to cultures. And as it turns out, guys, cultures, the various cultures in the world, right? American culture, European, Arab, African, the various cultures of the world have what? Have opposite views about the very same things, right? The various cultures of the world don't meet eye to eye when it comes to conceptions of right and wrong. Rather, various cultures have opposite views. And so this made a number of philosophers claim that there is no absolute morality, because morality is relative to cultures, that conceptions of right and wrong are relative to each and every culture. Can you give me examples, guys, of this supposed relativity? Well, think of how.
Doctor,
Yeah, go ahead, please.
let's say I was born in Kuwait, so I know how they eat there. I think the way they eat in Kuwait would
Yeah,
be considered as wrong in America, let's say, because it's related to
yeah.
their culture.
Diet habits and manners, absolutely. You know, various cultures on the world guys, cultures disagree on what the diet should be like, not to mention manners of eating. There you go, great. Also, marriage, right? Um, Marriage, divorce, and so I'm sure you can drinking habits, fashion. I mean, the list is endless, right? Raising children, sexuality. The list is huge, right? I mean, maybe let me share with you some shocking examples. You know, like in the past, many tribes, like in Africa and America, right? Um, in the past, right? I think this changed by now, but many tribes considered, for example, cannibalism to be normal. You know what cannibalism means? Eating a human flesh, right? But of course, other cultures don't agree on that, right? Right? In some cultures, again, sorry, give you a shocking news. Some cultures, it's considered normal to eat cockroaches, right? Or cats or dogs, right? Other cultures don't agree on that, right? Right, guys? You know that, right? Yeah. Um, yeah. Did you know, for example, Thailand, until recently in India, I'm not sure if this practice is still done now. I think it stopped. Yeah, that in India, it was considered normal for a widow to be buried, to be killed after the death of her husband, right? Yeah, I'm talking about a different example now. It was customary, it was considered normal for a widow to be buried alive after the death of her husband. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I'm sharing with you lots of examples. Eskimos, for example, consider it. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Hadi is talking about the diet case. Eskimos, guys, did you know that Eskimos consider it normal? Um, okay, I think it changed now. It was up till recently. Eskimos consider it right and normal to leave their elderly behind because, Eskimos traditionally were nomads. Yeah, they were not settled, so they were on the move, right? So it was considered, yeah, it was customary, normal for them to leave elderly behind, the elderly, leave them behind to die. Other cultures, of course, don't approve of that, right? So these are examples that made many claim that there are no absolutes, that morality is dependent on cultures, right? Another, guys, example is ethical egoism, another concept. Also, guys, ethical egoists deny absolutes. There are no absolutes. But the difference between egoism and relativism is that the egoists claim that morality is relative to the interests of each individual. So in that sense, egoism is they're subjectivist. They kind of claim that morality is subjective in the sense that it is dependent on the absolutely, Renaud wrote it, the self-interest of individuals. So what is right to Renaud might not be right for me. Why? Because my self-interest would be different than Rinat's self-interest, and vice versa, right? Wow. I mean, yes, definitely. Machiavelli is your primary example of an egoist, ethical egoist. Definitely. Um, you know what? Egoism is another word for selfishness, right? It's all according to, of course, you might ask me, isn't it paradoxical to use the word ethical egoism? Because they're opposites, right? We just said ethics is not about self-interest, right? Yeah. But that's why this term is a kind of, actually, I would call the cultural relativism and ethical egoism to be like uh, the approaches that or concepts that are like troublemakers. That's the word. They're troublemakers. Troublemakers in the sense that they question our traditional view of morality, that morality is meant to be common, is meant to take into account the interests of all, right? It's meant to be impartial. What we just said, these guys deny that. The relativist, the cultural relativist, and the ethical egoist kind of reduce morality to culture and self-interest of individuals. Self-interests of individuals. How do you jump to something ethical absolute? Are you guys following? Are you following us?
Yes, sir. It's all clear for now.
Yeah.
But we skipped the skepticism part.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, I didn't
We
get there
skipped.
yet. Okay, the
Yes.
third concept is skepticism. Okay, so what is ethic? Also, ethical skepticism is a troublemaker. Ethical skeptics. So, what do you think ethical skeptics would say? Yeah, they raise doubts. Ethical skeptics raise doubts about our ability as a human beings to know right from wrong. Be careful. The ethical skeptics don't say that they don't say that, or they don't claim that, for example, abortion is, they don't claim that we know what's right or wrong. Rather, ethical skeptics argue that we human beings are not in a position to know what's right and wrong. There may be it may be the case that there is something that is right and there's something that is wrong. But we as a human beings, we're not in a position to know what it is, right? So I guess the ethical skeptic would say, well, we don't know if murder is right or wrong. We don't know if lying is right or wrong. We don't know if bullying is right or wrong because we just don't know what's right or wrong. Yeah. Did you guys get the, yeah, there are various kinds of skeptics, obviously, but yeah, I wouldn't use the word neutral, but the skeptic, I guess, better word is that they don't make commitments. They don't commit themselves because they say we're not in a position to know what's right and wrong. And commitment requires knowledge of what's right and wrong. Yeah. Yes, I mean, and I think this is a really a difficult position because think about it. We know that, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but we know bullying is wrong, right? Right? Bullying is wrong, Renard, right? We know, I guess, murder is wrong, right? We know murder is wrong. We know rape is wrong. So the skeptics are making really kind of this strange claim that we don't know whether they're really ultimately right or wrong. But to be fair, the skeptics are doing it in a philosophical way, right? No, in I guess in real life, right? You might laugh at the skeptic here. In real life, I guess the skeptic would have to denounce rape, murder, and bullying, right? But in philosophy, in a classroom, the ethical skeptic would say, well, but we don't know what's right and what's wrong. Yes, why? Because skeptics claim that we don't have sufficient evidence to establish what's right or wrong, because we observe widespread disagreements and conflicts, right? So much so, widespread disagreement and conflict, so much so that we cannot establish with certainty what's right and what's wrong. Yeah, I mean, again, Hadi, as far as the skeptic, all kinds of actions related to morality, they would raise doubts about, including what you would call justified murder or unjustified murder. Because to them, ultimately, there are no grounds or sufficient reason to know what's right or what's wrong. But did you guys? I don't know if guys you get my critique that there's something hickey absurd about skepticism. I'm not sure I got your point, Hussein.
For the skepticism approach, for the ethical skepticism, how is it useful for us, and how can we use this approach? You get my point?
Exactly. I mean, you would say it's not a question of usefulness as a question of knowledge, right?
Okay, so it's like having a new mindset.
Yeah, so exactly, the skeptic here is saying, look, you know, we are concerned with having proper knowledge about what's right and wrong, and the skeptics say, well, we're not in a position to know what's right and wrong. But Rinat, did you get their point? The skeptics? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to me, I mean, my problem with them is that in the everyday life, ultimately, you have to make a decision, a commitment, right? Regarding bullying, regarding murder, right? So you need to make a decision, right? So I'm not sure if you know, if skepticism would be useful, as maybe Hussein said, in everyday life. But the skeptic would say, or would argue, that we're not concerned with everyday life as much as with philosophical knowledge of morality. Okay, what is ethical absolutism? Ethical absolutism is the view that there are absolute standards of right and wrong, that there are absolute concepts of right and wrong. So, guys, absolutism then is the opposite of cultural relativism, egoism, right? Absolutely, because absolutists would argue that murder, for example, murder is absolutely and universally wrong. Rape is absolutely universally wrong. Bullying is absolute, right? So they absolutists claim that there are universal standards, absolute universal standards of right and wrong. And I guess this is our common sense attitude, right? I don't know. I mean, this is what I guess the racial guys, the definition that I gave you earlier, remember? The minimal consent, that definition is a kind of absolutist, right? To say that morality is concerned with providing reasons that take into account the interests of all is a kind of universalist claim, right? It's not relativist. Yeah? So the relativist and the egoist maybe would not be happy with that. Not to mention the skeptics. Okay, maybe two more. I'll share two more theories, two more approaches with you. Sentiment theory. The sentiment theory is, again, also a kind of a troublemaker. Jean-Marc, but how do we know what is absolute or not, Jean-Marc? We need to reason about it, right? Yeah, so it is through reasoning, through moral reasoning, that we identify that which is absolutely right. That, for example, it's just wrong universally to sacrifice the reason, right? As you said, right? It's just wrong, absolutely. Although maybe Renat disagreed with you, right? I'm not sure how I got your point. Yes, Renat, sentiments are.
I was talking about ethical absolutism. Like when you said that we can't know if it's absolutely right or absolutely wrong, couldn't it be like because humans are very social creatures and sometimes you also have like these physical sensations when you're doing something wrong, you know, like guilt or I mean, usually those come with nurture, knowing what right or wrong is, but isn't it also, you know, built in us in a way?
Are you talking about absolutism?
Yeah.
Yeah, how these absolute standards are set. There's, of course, there are different approaches, right? So some say it is psychological, some would say it is through pure rationality. But what all ethical absolutists agree on is that there are a number of universal standards, right? Regardless of varieties or differences, perhaps in human experiences and cultures. I don't know if I answered you, Hadi. Sentiments, yeah, we're gonna actually, guys. All the approaches we're gonna deal later fall under absolutism, more or less. So, if we get time, I maybe give you a feeling of relativism or egoism. Okay, sentiments theory is the view that that ultimately morality is defined in terms of emotions and sentiments. That morality is not matter of knowledge. It's not matter of cognition. It's matter of feelings. It's matter of it's like taste. It's a kind of skeptical theory, absolutely, but with some variation, absolutely, definitely. I'm glad you're predicting that, but not equivalent 100%. Yeah, yeah. So it's like a taste. So morality is like it's analogous to taste. Morality is like analogous to a person liking coffee over tea or chocolate over cereals, right? Right? But of course, this is kind of, we think that morality is more than taste, is more than emotions, is more than sentiments. As Rachel's put it, it has to do with, yeah, with reason, with taking into account the interests of all. Exactly. The final concept, and I think I'll stop with that, is divine command theory. The divine command theory, and by the way, that theory was introduced like in the 18th century. is a theory that defines goodness in terms of God's will as expressed in holy books. So good or wrong are defined in what God wills in the holy book. So it's kind of, the divine command theory, in other words, is like, yeah, it's like a religious approach, kind of religious approach. Why do I say kind? Because it's ultimately validates morality in terms of what God wills. Right? Yeah. So these are the various options or various concepts that one can think about when it comes to moral reasoning. I wanted to share with you, Hala, I was watching Lord of the Rings yesterday. Have you ever heard of the Ring of Gyges? Do you know, guys, the movie Lord of the Rings? Okay, try. I leave you with this maybe exercise for now. Try to link, research the Ring of Gyges. Try to link it with Lord of the Rings, if you watch Lord of the Rings, and then try to identify. Okay, where am I here? Try to identify the Lord of the Rings, the Ring of Gyges, with one of those approaches. Which of those approaches would actually go best with Lord of the Rings? Yeah, Hussein, that was good. You're quick saying at it. Definitely. You know the ring, you know, guys, Lord of the Rings. I think I'll stop here. Let me. Any questions, guys? Time to ask.
Yes, doctor, I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Regarding the ethical absolutism, what's the thing that these people refer to in order to determine the right and good? For example, in the ethical egoism, it's referred to the oneself, or the cultural relativism
Well,
is referred to the
yes. So that's why I said we're gonna explore the various options. So, for example, utilitarians and utilitarians are kind of absolutist, would ground the definition of morality in terms of the principle of utility, right?
Yes.
Other philosophers have different um, principles or different guidelines. All right. So
Yeah.
you wait and we'll see how the various writers define the universality of morality. All
Okay,
right.
great. Thank you.
Thank you. Renat, no, but no, but as far as the ring, Renat, is concerned, the ring, it kind of highlights self-interest of individuals, right, Renat? So in connection with the ring, I don't know if you watched that. That guys, did you all write down the poll? I started the poll, so make sure you write, guys, your names. Yeah, the Hobbit is. Did you guys write your